Hello everyone, welcome back to Archviz Africa. It's Dixon here again with you from 3DS Studio. In our previous tutorials, we had a look at Corona 3DSMAX and Corona Render, and we basically look at the basic introduction to 3DSMAX and how to kind of navigate your way around 3DSMAX without being intimidated by all these buttons that we have in 3DSMAX. So today what we're going to do is that we're going to look at this model that we brought from Revit, which is the sample model of Revit, and we're going to see how we can render this kind of shot. Okay, so basically what we're going to do is, or what I do is that normally I just go to select by name, check my previous tutorials to kind of understand what this means. So then I type sun, okay, and then I select the sun and I delete it. Okay, for me, I don't want any interference with any other lighting than the lighting that I'll be using in Corona. If I'm using V-Ray, I'll do the same thing. I really don't want any interference. So these are also some light fittings from V-Ray. Okay, so I'm going to click on one and just right click and say select similar. So you see that it has selected the lights that are similar, and I'll just press delete. Okay, so then I just want to make sure there's no light source apart from the light source that I will have control on. Okay, so let's go quickly to Corona Render, and I just want to show you. If you go to download, maybe this is your first time of using Corona Render, you can download Corona Render 7 for trial. You can try it for 45 days unlimited demo if you want to try it out. It's really a good software, so have a look at it. Okay, I have a purchased one that I use, so yeah, let's have a look at it. Okay, so we're going to have a look at Corona Render. If I go to render setup, and then so the last time I also showed you the tabs that I use here, which one of them is rendering. If I click on rendering and I go to render setup, okay, and then under renderer, I'm going to change that to Corona. Okay, so I'm not going to do anything else. I'm just going to leave this just as it is for now. No touching of any setting. Corona render default settings is really good. I don't even think I've ever changed any of the settings apart from maybe the output size or adding some rendering element or denoiser, which we'll have a look at all those things, or light mix. But apart from that, I don't touch anything in terms of the rendering settings. So let's move right into it. Let's just close this. We've set it as a renderer. And then one of the nice things about Corona is that if I select this view, okay, so let's say this is our camera shot. I'm going to use this field of view to just zoom it a little bit out a bit. And then if I go here, it's a button. Here, you see this button here that has a plus on the camera. It says create Corona camera from the active perspective view. This is a perspective view. If I click on it, now this view is a Corona camera. I think that is beautiful, because then if all the cameras that I have from my Revit, so for example, if I create this camera and I say approach, this approach, I can just click and it becomes a Corona camera. So now it's Corona camera number 2, okay? Which I think is quite nice, because sometimes trying to duplicate or create the same cameras becomes a problem, okay? So yeah, that's a quick tip there. Okay, so you can see even this one, you can also create a camera. Okay, so let's go back to our top view and go to wireframe. Okay, so now we've got our view. So the next thing that we're going to do, and as I mentioned, I really like to kind of show you something by doing it. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is going to go to rendering, and then we will go to material editor. Okay, and then we will click on material editor, compact. I use compact, so I'm going to show you through compact. Okay, a lot of people use the slate, which is also great. I've started using it a little bit, but I'm going to show you what I use often. Okay, so the slate, let's go to the slate. Maybe if it's the first time of opening 3ds Max, you might end up opening the slate. So material editor, slate, which use the node kind of way of applying materials. You might find something like this, and you can easily change it from slate to compact. Okay, so let's go to compact. That's what I use. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is that I want to set up my lighting. But before I do that, I don't want any interference in terms of the materials that are in the scene. And so what I normally do is that I apply one material, one default material to the entire scene. And I do this by clicking on one of these materials balls here. So I click on it and I click on physical. So physical basically is the default material that comes 3ds Max. So I'm just going to click on physical and I'll change it to Corona material, physical material. This is a new, in the Corona 7, they've added this physical material, which is awesome because it allows us to kind of add PBR materials, which we'll probably have a look at it. Okay, so I'm just going to click physical material, and you see that now this material is a Corona material and it's a physical material with a default color. Okay, so I'm going to give it a name, and I normally call it base material. So I give it a name by typing the name there in here. Okay, don't worry about all these things, we'll look at it. Okay, so now the next thing that I do is I press Ctrl A, and then I assign this gray material to everything in this scene. Okay, so you can either do that, or I just did undo because I want to show you something. So you can either do that, or you can go to rendering and you go to render setup, and then you go to scene, and you see here there's material override. So if I click to switch on the material override, I can drag and drop this in there, and I say instant because if I change anything here, I want it to change. Okay, so now everything here will be overridden by this base material. That's a very good process also, but I also like to just do Control O and assign to it. Okay, so let's go to rendering and let's just click on render. Let's see what we're going to get. Okay, we've got this overexposed image. Okay, if we kind of reduce the exposure to like -4, we get that. Okay, and we are getting this lighting. So you ask yourself, why are we getting lighting? We haven't placed any lighting there. We are getting this lighting because when you go to rendering and you go to environment, you see that there's a physical sun and sky there. But you also realize that when we click on the render, this physical light and sun does not really have any kind of proper lighting or shadows or light coming from a certain specific source. Okay, So let's close that. And then what we're going to do now is that we are going to go to the create panel. Let's close the material tab. We're going to go to the create panel, and then we will go to light. We will click on the photometric and click on Corona, and then we're going to choose Corona Sun. So I'll click on Corona Sun, and I always draw my sun or anything that I place it from the top view. Okay, so our camera is somewhere here. We're looking somewhere there. So maybe perhaps we can bring in our light somewhere there. Okay. And then as we release the mouse and we drag, and we lift, we move our hands, it kind of shows us the height. If we go to like left view, we can see how our sun sits there. So the next thing that I'm going to do is that I'll click on the sun and I'll go to the modify tab and I'll say add corona sky environment. Okay. And it says, do you really want to replace the this physical sun and sky environment? And I'll say yes. Okay. Because I want corona to take control. Okay. So now if I click on render, there we can see our light, and you can see our highlights compress. It's quite like almost kind of bent out, so you have to change that to about 5. Okay, and then also you can kind of work work with your contrast as well. Increase your contrast, and then you can reduce your saturation as well. Okay. So this, I mean, the white balance is up. It's up to you. It's up to what you're trying to get. What kind of image are you trying to kind of achieve? Okay. So you can just play around with that and see. See, you can reduce the exposure really without doing much. You can see already we have quite a beautiful shot here. Okay, so let's close that. Okay, let's kind of adjust it a little bit. So now come a little bit close. Okay, and then when we go back to rendering, go back to rendering, render setup, and under the scene where we added the material override, we can tell Corona to preserve certain materials. So we can say preserve light or glass. So let's say glass because we don't have any light in there for now. So if we say it should preserve glass and we render, because we have not added any kind of Corona glass here, it's not picking it up. But let's add some glass materials. So we click on glass and then we will go to Corona materials, which is open Corona materials. We click there and we click on glass. And very simple, I'm just going to right click and say assign to material. So I just right click and I say assign to selected object. Okay, so now it has selected it. Now let's render. You see that now all the glass is preserved, and then the other materials there is still in the default. Okay, which is really nice. Okay, Okay, so let's cancel that. Okay, so we can basically, you see that this glass is different from the others. That was what was done in Revit. So we can assign a different color to it. Okay, great. So today we are not really going to look at materials. I was basically showing you the lighting and what it means to kind of preserve glass and all that. So I'm going to also show you, if I click on this view, I'm on this view, and I'll click on start interactive rendering and active viewport. It will mean that this viewport now is like on our interactive viewport. So whatever changes we do will show in there. So sometimes the viewport keep changing. So what you can do is you go to rendering, render setup, okay, and then you pick the camera, the view that you want. So let's say, for example, I want to change this to camera one. So this is a camera one that we want to lock. So we can lock this camera. So you can just click lock, and once it's locked, that interactive is locked to camera one. Okay, so if I zoom this in, it doesn't zoom in, it's the same. Okay, and I do this because then it helps me to see the lighting. Like if I lower the sun, you can see this is what I'm going to get in terms of my render. If I go to top view and I move the sun, you can see this is what I'm going to get. Okay, so this kind of give you an idea of what you're going to get before you render. And this is quite important because you don't always want to click on the rendering first before you say, oh, I don't like this. Okay, so this is quite nice. It's really nice in the interactive render mode. So you can see, you begin to see exactly what was in the interactive view. Okay, you can see your sun kind of reflecting there. Okay, so if you click on render, you have to click this view again to activate the interactive render. So this is one way of adding lighting in your scene, which is adding corona sun. The other way is through HDRI. And so let's have a look at that at HDRI. So let's delete the sun. Okay, so we still have light emitting in our scene because of our environment. Because on our environment, we've got skylight environment, which is corona. Okay, so it's giving us light. Okay, so now what we're going to do is that we're going to rendering environment, and this time around we're going to click on the sky environment, and then we will choose corona bitmap. So you see that immediately we pick corona bitmap, our scene is dark because there's nothing on the corona bitmap. So we will go to rendering, and then we will go to material editor, or we can press M, which also brings the material editor. Okay, so let's close it and press M on our keyboard, and it brings our material editor. So what we're going to do is that we're going to drag this corona bitmap into one of our slots here. So you're going to drag this and bring it here, and we say instant. Immediately, it will take us to a place to look for an image. So I'm going to look for an image. We're going to look for an HDRI image. Okay, and you can Google HDRI images. You can get quite a lot of nice HDRI on the internet for free. Okay, so I'm just going to pick an HDRI, a very simple HDRI. Just pick no, that will not look okay. Let's just pick any of them. Let's say okay. Okay, so immediately you can see that our HDRI has applied to the scene. Okay, so now if I click on render, and obviously our exposure, we need to kind of look at our exposure. So I'll start it from a 0. Okay, I'll start it from a 0, and then I'll see if the brightness works for me, or if it's too much. Then you can basically kind of play with the intensity of it. Okay, and then again, if I close that, start interactive render, let's close this. Here in the material editor, if I click on the HDRI, you can see here there's rotate degrees environment. So just have a look at this image. And if I change the degree to, let's say, 90, for example, you can see it changes. This is quite nice, really, really nice. Okay. So you can basically kind of play with how you want your scene. Okay. Really, really nice. If I change the bitmap, so I can reload a different bitmap here. If I just say reload or load map, and I just change it to something else, to another HDRI, and I just say okay, you see that immediately it will change it. It will change it quickly, because it's an instant. The background is connected to this. I mean, the environment is connected to this. I mean, this environment is connected to that. So then it will change it immediately. Okay. So we can basically change the HDRI to our preferred HDRI that we want. So there you go. You have. So basically today, I wanted to show you how to set up your lighting in Corona Render. We had a look at our Corona Sun, as well as using HDRI to set up your lighting. And yes, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video, and hit the notification button so that you can get notification anytime I release tutorials. In our next tutorial, we will have a look at basic materials in Corona, how to create our own materials, how to use the existing materials in Corona, and also Forestpack, how to add some grass and some trees in our Corona render. And yes, see you again next time. Bye.